So how did you get into the faith? Are you, I mean, you and I are the same age.
Right.
People will think I'm 10 years older, but that's not true.
No. You look great. No, seriously.
But how did you, I mean, my conversion, I was 17, but what about?
I was raised by my mom, single parent, only child. My mom did the best that she could, but she had to take 2 jobs. So most of my life, I was a latchkey child, which is, 50% of the country today. Mm-hmm. I was raised by MTV. I was deeply impacted by a terrible television show called Sex in the 90s. Okay. And so it was giving me because I, not having a father, not knowing anything about sexuality, not knowing anything about the meaning and the purpose of my life, it was saying sex, freedom, all these licentious activities. And so that was my mindset through high school. Fortunately, my mom did a good job in sheltering me and not giving me money or freedom to go to parties. So that kind of closed me in a little bit, and I did very good academically. Mm-hmm. And so I received a very large scholarship to go to the University of St. Thomas in Houston. And there, the philosophy and the intro to theology really opened my eyes to the truth of the Catholic faith intellectually. So I was like, that's why concupiscence, I get it. That's why I'm so messed up. Yeah. That's why I make my mom cry. That's why I ruin all the relationships that I really care about. It's because I have a disordered inclination to do bad stuff. That makes so much sense. But I wasn't converted in my heart. And so a lot of my classmates, I hung out with the best of the bad kids and the worst of the good kids. Mm-hmm. So they were not horrible, but they weren't good. They weren't good, but they weren't terrible. They were doing drugs and alcohol and things like that, but that's what, many college kids were doing. And they were going into the RCIA program to receive the sacrament of confirmation. And so I was like, these guys are barely Catholic and they're getting confirmed. I want to get what they're getting because I believe this stuff intellectually. So I can do the same stuff and receive the sacraments. I had no...
So you're in college and you hadn't yet been confirmed?
No, I had not. Okay. So I made my first communion when I was in the 8th grade. Okay. And then after that, I never went back to church. Mm-hmm. It was just kind of like a formality, check the box, make my grandmother had passed away and she had mentioned that was important to her before she died, that I make first communion. But other than that, the only prayer I knew was a superstitious prayer to St. Jude that all Mexicans seem to have. And my mom she says that she's Mexican.
Are you okay?
Exactly. Yeah. So I don't know. My skin is white. Uh-huh. My mom's skin is white, but she speaks in Spanish. Okay. And, answers the phone in Spanish. So I think she thinks we're Mexican. Love you, Mom.
I mean, is your grandparents from Mexico? Or?
Our family tree is very shady.
Okay.
Everybody that I've ever met looks really white, except for my mom's sisters, which look very Mexican. I have no idea what I am, to be honest with you. I don't even want to do 23andMe because I don't know what's going to come out.
Okay. Yeah.
So I went on a retreat through the campus ministry, and I didn't know anything about the Eucharist. I didn't know anything about Eucharistic adoration. And they're like, we're going to go do a holy hour with Jesus. And I'm like, all right, what do you mean by that? I don't want to look like an idiot. What are we going to be doing? He's like, we're just going to sit there and look at Jesus, like a picture of Jesus. What are we looking at? No, the Eucharist. I was like, that little circle? Yeah, that's Jesus. I was like, no. Yeah, that's Jesus. I was like, so what do I do when I go in there? And there was a philosophy professor. His name was Dr. Rebard. He said, you just go in there and repeat the holy name of Jesus. It's like, for an hour? It's like, yeah. So I went in there for about 10 minutes. I just repeat the holy name of Jesus, 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 Jesus. And then about 10 minutes in, a warmth came over me and I heard an interior voice say, my son, be quiet. And I was like, oh no, Jesus, 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 Jesus. He's like, stop talking. I was like, Jesus, Jesus. And in an instant, it was as if the finger of God touched my soul, and my heart was like a rock, and everything inside of my heart melted, and I just started bawling and weeping. And this was before the Passion came out. And I was having, so I didn't have this in my mind before. I was having what I didn't know was like a moment of mental prayer where I was visualizing scenes from the Passion, Jesus looking at me in the face, telling me how much he loved me, how much I was loved. And I was just bawling for like 45 minutes straight, nonstop. Afterwards, people were like, are you okay? Like, is everything all right? Like, that's not normal. Well, you're like sobbing, like hard.
Like a little bit of crying
like,
would have been fine.
This was like ugly crying. Like, get this guy out of here. He's a distraction. And I just kept repeating. I was like, that's really Jesus. Like, God is really there. But, and so I became radically Eucharistic. Like, I would spend every day in the church, but I didn't stop sinning. Like, I was still, so I became a Eucharistic minister, And I didn't know better at the time. I wouldn't do that now. But I was becoming a Eucharistic minister, giving out Holy Communion, and then I would go and commit public mortal sins like every night. Because I was just like, I was living two different lives. And the campus minister, an amazing, amazing sister, she'd previously given me a brown scapular because she told me that I was on the highway to hell. And I was like, sister, is this how you start conversations? She's like, when I see somebody who's on the highway to hell, sometimes I have to say hard things.
Was she at St. Thomas More? St. Thomas
University, yeah.
She was one of the sisters there. Is it the one with the black veil thing? And
yes. And the long brown simple habit with like a cross that's two nails.
She came up to you and said, you're on the highway to hell?
Yes.
How did she know that?
She was a spicy sister because she was spicy, but I loved it. Because there was a talent show, and it was for campus ministry, and I went up and told a dirty joke during the talent show, and she was like super offended by this. And so after I had this major conversion, she saw the changes in me. She saw that I was Eucharistic minister. She also saw that I was living a life that is not compatible with Catholicism. And it was around Lent, and everybody in campus ministry was like, what are you giving up? What are you giving up? And I was like, I don't know. I was like doing the typical chocolate soda thing. And she said, how about you give up sin, Gabriel? How about you stop sinning mortally and publicly? That would be a good...
How did she know you were doing this?
Because everybody knew. I was...
Well, you were going to parties?
I was going to parties. It was just very obvious. Okay. It was like I had girlfriends. It was just very obvious that I public displays of affection.
Yeah. And did she say this to you in front of other people?
I don't remember. I just remember her face in my face telling me, give up sin for Lent.
Now, because of your pride, were you offended by that, or did you feel loved?
No, I was shocked.
Shocked, yeah.
I wasn't offended at all. When she confronted me with the truth, but I had never thought about it. I thought that it was okay. It was really strange circumstance. So that day I said, I'm not going to sin for Lent. And I went home, and if this was a cartoon, it would say,
2 hours later.
And I had looked at pornography and committed solitary sin within 2 hours of making a very, very, very firm resolution that that's what I was going to do. Yeah. And so that night I recognized I have a problem. I've been sinning my entire life, not because I want to. Like I really didn't want to, and I did. I have no control. And so I had a moment, I guess, of true contrition, and I was in my room and I was crying like a hard cry and begging God for mercy. God, have mercy on me. I'm a poor sinner. I'm a slave. I didn't know that I was a slave. Help me. And when I said that in my prayer, I heard the exact same words repeated back to me audibly from a diabolical voice. And it was like, it was a very high-pitched, screeching, mocking, insulting. And I don't know where it came from, but immediately I said, St. John Vianney, pray for me. I have no idea where that came from. I had no devotion to St. John Vianney. Maybe I had heard about him somewhere, but it was like instinctual. The moment that happened, voice goes away. So the next day, I was afraid to go home because, I audibly heard this. This was not a mistake. This was not an interior. This wasn't like I felt guilty for sinning against the Lord. I did feel guilty the night before, but this was not, like I was not dreaming this up. So I went to campus ministry. I got a pamphlet on the rosary. I went into my room. I'd never prayed the rosary by myself before at that point. I got on my bed and I just sat there and I was like opening this packet. And I said, all right, how do you do this thing? I believe. And the second that I said, I believe, a force grabbed me by the throat, pins me on the bed, holds me down. The room is like spinning and ice cold. I try to scream for help, but I'm being choked. I could still breathe, but I couldn't communicate because I was trying to yell for my mom in the other room to come and help me. And I heard an interior voice say, I believe it's my guardian angel now looking back on it, pray. And so I was like, I couldn't pray. And he said, pray the Hail Mary. And I was like, I couldn't say the words. And finally, the interior voice was like, and this all happened within like, it feels like an eternity, but it was like a 10-second like lockdown. Say it in your head. And so I got the words in my head, Hail Mary. And internally, when I said those words, I felt like a release. And then so I said it audibly, Hail Mary. And the words Mary left my lips. The presence left the room. I came back to, and after that, I was freaked out. And so I got on the internet and I typed in Google, demon choking you, pornography, masturbation.
You gotta be careful typing that in.
Yeah. So, and thanks be to God, a website that doesn't exist anymore, which I wish it still did because it was very helpful to me at the time, called Padre Pio Center for Deliverance, came up. And then they use the language of, do you have hooks in your life? Do you have intrinsically disordered things in your life that are entry points for the devil? And they listed out, bad movies, bad books, bad music, New Age books, false god statues, pornography. They had a whole list of basically every possible mortal sin. And I was like, yes, 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 yes. And then my mom at the time, she was very much into New Age because she didn't have an authentic Catholic spirituality. So she had Buddha statues, African little faces, elephants all over the house, which apparently she just likes elephants. That night, I went to bed, I made a resolution, all that stuff is gone out of this house. So she went to work, I took everything, put it in a trash bag, I took her statues, smashed them in the front yard. It was not a pretty day when my mom arrived home the next day.
That is powerful. Wow.
Yeah, it changed me. I was never the same after that.
I'm trying to think what I would do if something like that happened to me. Yeah. I mean, did you speak to trusted friends or about it? And
I talked to another sister.
I think part of me would be afraid that I was overreacting or imagining it, or just got sort of emotional in a sort of prayer experience. Of course, what you're describing is far beyond
it was
feeling
not
emotional.
And somebody tried to tell me, oh, you had sleep paralysis. I was like, I was standing straight up. And something was holding me down, trying to get in my chest.
Yeah.
And I said the name of Mary, and I don't have a relationship with her. And it went away in an instant, like instantaneously. And so I told this sister, who's now I think deceased, God bless her, Sister Madeline Grace, about everything that had happened. She's very famous at the University of St. Thomas as like being strict, all these strict, good, holy women. She's like, you did the right thing. She's like, you did the right thing. If I was living in your house, I would have burned and trashed all of those things. She was like, just deal with the punishment. But then this was the greatest blessing of my life.
Hey, thank you so much for watching. Before you go, do us a favor, leave a comment, let us know what you thought of the video, like, and subscribe.